Welcome, all you wiretappers out there. Back here in the studio of Gangland Wire, I've got a special guest on the phone with me. Now, Niko, I apologize if I'm going to mess up your last name. Niko Vorobyov. Maybe you should
Vorobyov.
introduce yourself. You introduce yourself, Niko.
My name's Niko Vorobyov, and yeah, that surname gave me a lot of hell in school.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Of course, all I've got this kind of northeast Missouri. All I have is this northwest Missouri twang, and sometimes if I'm not familiar with the name, then I struggle with it. But moving right along, Niko has done a prodigious amount of work and released a book called Dope. Oh God, all of a sudden, Dopeworld.
That's it. Dopeworld.
Niko has written and released a book called Dopeworld, which is, I tell you what, it's the dope around the world. It's a narcotics business from one end of the world to the other. I see titles from Russia with drugs to A Trip Through the Ages, Keep Off the Grass, Chemical Warfare, The Pizza Connection, New Blood, Havana Nights, Planes, Chains, and Automobiles, The Boys from Cianola, Dinner at El Chapo's. Did you have dinner at El Chapo's?
I had a barbecue.
Barbecue.
At his cousin's house.
All right, cool. We probably ought to hear about that. That'll be pretty interesting, I got a feeling. But Niko, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get to where you are now with that book?
So basically, I get a lot of. I was on another podcast, and I remember one guy in the YouTube comments. He was like, "I can't place this guy. He's always like switching between Hackney and Hollywood," and the reason is I was born in my accent. I was born in Russia originally. It was the Soviet Union back then, but then we moved to Italy first, then America. I learned English in America off the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the animated series. So I always had kind of a slight American accent, but then when we moved to Britain when I was like 6 or 7, and so it's just this kind of weird mix of an American British accent. But thing is, we didn't move to London, which is it's very like a global city. It's a very multinational city, kind of like New York, I imagine. And we moved to a small town called Bath, which is near Bristol, which at that time, it's changed a bit now, but at that time, there weren't many foreigners there at all. So it's basically me, this one Pakistani kid, and this one Iranian kid, and that's it. That was the United Nations. The rest were all like white English kids. And so I didn't really kind of fit in very well. I wouldn't say that I was like horribly bullied, but I did have a lot of like self-esteem issues and like issues that I didn't really like. I never felt like I fit in. So that kind of got me when I was kind of an older teenager, about 17, 18. I kind of started thinking that that's what kind of got me into the drug scene, into the underground drug scene, the rave scene, especially ecstasy. I was thinking, I could go to a lot of parties, like make some new friends, kind of get over my issues like that. And it kind of worked. It kind of worked because I did go to a lot of parties and I did make a lot of new friends. But then one day, by that point, I was already in university. But one day, I very stupidly got caught. So I think you, as a ex-cop, might appreciate this. So us criminals, we have to be lucky all the time.
Yeah.
Once.
I only have to be lucky once. You're right.
Obviously, like as also with I'm not gonna lie, like in prison, a lot of the guys in prison, they're not the sort of Machiavellian kind of James Bond villain types. They're guys who did some pretty stupid mistakes, got caught. So that helps you a lot as well.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
I ended up there, and I was never like, even though I was a drug dealer, I was never kind of like a gangster type drug dealer. I was more like kind of like a college campus, rave party on the weekends kind of guy. But if I'm honest, like the UK prison system, it's not that bad. Like where I was, there were fights every day. But generally, as someone who's not involved in gangs, I wasn't on the receiving end of those much at all. But what did get to me was like the sort of psychological isolation of being locked in a cell. Like there's no way I could get used to that. So I had like a lot of these same thoughts, just like negative thoughts going round and round my head. But one outlet I had for it was writing letters to the outside. So I'd write my friends letters to a lot of my friends, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's quite funny. That's like a funny observation on prison life." So that's kind of what got me into writing. And I thought that like once, like sometime later after I got out, I thought, if they say I have a talent for this, I could use my kind of turn my negative experience into a kind of positive. And I guess also write about what you know. That's what they always say.
Yeah.
So that's what came together eventually into my first book, Dopeworld.
So how did you start with your research? I mean, obviously you started in the library and on the internet and all that, but you've got some more personal experiences. You went out and interviewed people. How did you kind of plan this out, this book?
Well, if I'm honest, I didn't really plan it much at all. I just kind of like, because I was just starting, like, I didn't have many, how do I say, like, good journalism connections. I didn't have like a big newspaper backing me up or whatever, giving me funds and networks. So I had to do a lot of Googling. I had to find out who were the right people to get in touch with in every country. Because like I couldn't just go to some Mexican village around these saloon bars, look for burly muchachos with big sombreros and like, excuse me, could one of you gentlemen direct me to the nearest puppy field? Now I had to have someone to make those introductions for me. So a lot of time was spent just Googling, like planning my route, who I'm gonna meet, where I'm gonna go. That took up a lot of my time.
So what would be one of the most dangerous meetings that you felt like you had?
Oh, there are three. There are three. One of them didn't make it into the book, but I'm hoping to save it for another one. So the first one was in Colombia. That was on a coca plantation. I didn't recommend your listeners to do this because I'm not sure I broke the law, but the guys I was with definitely were. And you don't want to be breaking the law enough. Well, I don't want to be breaking the law, period. Look where I ended up. But I will say that factually, there are some parts of Colombia where you can go do these sort of illegal tours, these kind of make your own cocaine tours, where they take you to a coca plantation and they show you how it's done, and they give you like a little souvenir at the end. I remember actually the guy was trying to shove like loads of like little vials of cocaine in my pocket. I was gonna fly the next day. So I was like, no, el perro, the dog, the dogs. I just trying to give them all back to him. But that was scary as hell because I thought at any point we were way out, like about I don't know, half an hour. We went on horseback, so about half an hour on horseback out of the nearest sort of big town. I'm just in the middle of the rolling countryside. I'm just looking around. There's no one there apart from like this farmer, a couple of guys with machetes, and this woman who I guess was his girlfriend or something. And I thought just at any point this army helicopter is going to land in the middle of the coca field. I'm going to run. I'm obviously going to get caught because they're trained soldiers. And then I'm going to have to like make a call to my mother, like, Mom, it happened again.
Oh my God, Niko, I didn't bargain for that story. That was one hell of a story. How did you make that connection, dude? How did you, I mean, you must have known somebody that knew somebody that had maybe done that before or something. Of course, you may not want to talk about that, I understand, but I'm really curious about how you even, I mean, how does one even go about figuring out somebody to ask that somebody else that does this?
Well, at that time, this was I did that just before I put it in the book, but I did before I had like the initial idea to write the book. But I was backpacking around South America with some money I saved up, and when you're in Colombia, it's just like a thing you hear about around the hostels or in the back.
Oh, okay.
But you have to be careful because they'll tell you to go to like the specific specific town and stay with like a specific kind of tour guide, I guess it would be the right word here. But thing is, the Colombian like the local police are also quite aware of this.
Yeah.
So if you try to book try to stay with the wrong guy and ask them about this, you're gonna end up in they probably won't you won't end up on like Banged Up Abroad or like some show like that, but they will probably try to get you to pay an on-the-spot fine, as it were.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those on-the-spot fines, they're pretty good. What I would be worried about would maybe become the victim of a kidnapping if they thought you had access to any family with any money or anything outside the country. Of course, you would obviously not have any money on you, but you know, they do those kidnappings in some of those places like that. They used to down in Colombia quite a little bit. That was more of a political. FARC was doing some kidnappings.
Yeah.
But I'd be worried about getting kidnapped, man. I don't know. I wouldn't have the courage to do that. I salute your courage, man, or maybe it's your stupidity. I don't know which.
Probably a bit of both.
Really?
I'm gonna lean more on the stupidity side.
Well, I did a lot of stupid things when I was young too. You weren't very old, I don't think, when you did this. How old were you?
Oh, 25, 26.
Yeah, well, I did lots of crazy things, especially under the influence of alcohol back then. So anyhow, so that's a hell of a story.
Another story would be in the Philippines when we went to. So just the basic like context for your listeners who might not know. There's this new president in the Philippines called. Well, no, he's not new anymore. He's been around for a couple of years now. But the president they have now, Rodrigo Duterte, this what he calls like a war on drugs, but it's like quite a bit more intense than well you have like even in the States. He's basically got death squads going around killing anyone who's even suspected, like not even proven, but like even suspected of being a drug user, not even like a drug dealer, just like a drug user or a drug dealer, and most of them are like not big time kingpins. Mostly it's just like some guy who's living in the slums, like selling meth out of his shack to like 2 or 3 other guys. I'm not sure how many, because the numbers, it's kind of hard to get an accurate number with these sort of like death squad things. They didn't release the like, body count, but I think I read on Human Rights Watch or something up to like 25,000, 30,000 murders, something like that, which is crazy. But anyway, yeah, we got to meet one of the death squad guys. I got to meet him through a local journalist who worked with someone I know at RT, the Russian TV network. And we went to this karaoke bar on the outskirts of Manila. Went around the back, went to this little room upstairs, and he was already just standing there, like in the middle of the room with like this blank expression on his face, black balaclava, dressed all in black, black gloves as well. I noticed he had a little backpack with a bullet was hanging off the zipper. And he sat down, and at one point he got his pistol out and put it on the table, and then he started waving it around. And a couple of times, like the barrel passed by. He wasn't like anything; he was just demonstrating. But the barrel passed by my face. I'm like, I really hope no one told him about my old job.
Wow, that's wild. That's crazy, man. That's
Well, one thing he said that was quite interesting was, and this wasn't just me. There's like BBC News. They also had a similar kind of interview as well. So it's not just me that like found it out, as it were. But he says that he worked for a general or someone in the military, and that he left a lot of drug dealers and drug kingpins alone, so long as they remember to pay their tax.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that at least part of this war on drugs in the Philippines, it's not so much cleaning up the streets as it is getting rid of the private competition.
Interesting. I tell you what, in that drug business, as you probably have found out, corruption is just rife. When you've got that kind of money, floating around, cash money floating around. It's especially in third world countries where
Yeah,
their
yeah.
law enforcement are all notoriously underpaid. Everything is just riddled with corruption from one end of the system to the other. That's kind of the bad thing about the current narcotics business is there's so much corruption that comes along with it that poor people don't have a chance. Talk about no equal justice for anybody, man. When you got those narcos running everything, it's all about them and what they can do and the money you can make. So I know you ran into that. It's kind of interesting talking about that and how they deal with narcotics in the Philippines. And I've read about that. He's supposedly is this strong man and will just kill drug dealers. And in the United States, we have this war on drugs. And I was a soldier in the war on drugs. I always like to say I was once a soldier in Ronnie Reagan's war on drugs. I started out under the Reagan administration, and when they started amping a lot of money into the drug war, and we got a lot of equipment and laws passed that would, you can make a snitch out of anybody. You're looking at 50 years in the penitentiary, they'll rat out their mother. We had lots of tools and overtime and cars, and we go after drug dealers that had nice cars so we could take their cars and then have them to drive ourselves. And it was, there's always some kind of corruption around that drug business, around that money. And that doesn't seem to have done any good. That doesn't seem like there's anything that's done any good. Do you have any familiarity with Portugal where they've legalized drugs? What's the story there?
They haven't so much legalized as they've decriminalized, which means it's not a police party at all. So you can still be arrested, but you'd have to be doing something really stupid. Like you'd have to be like lighting up a crack pipe in front of a school in broad daylight or something. To be fair, I think if you're doing that, you should be arrested. But yeah, so they've just they've stopped pursuing all kinds of lower level cases. So that means that if like a teenager, for example, is get caught smoking pot, it won't ever end up on their criminal record. What will happen is they'll get diverted to this sort of board. This sort of like, I think there's like 3 people on the board. There's like a doctor, a social worker, and someone else. I don't remember exactly who. And they try to kind of assess you and see if you have like a drug problem. If you don't, if you're just kind of like a casual user, like, okay, like I do coke, I don't know, twice a year on my birthday and on New Year's, and you just happen to get caught on New Year's, then they'll probably say, okay, yeah, fine, just like be careful, is just don't do this, and this, don't share banknotes, like basic safety advice. If you do have a problem, then what they do is they try to divert, like they ask you if you want to be diverted to like getting help, and all the help there is free. And I think some companies actually get like tax cuts for employing recovering addicts, so to give them more of an incentive, rather than a criminal record to kind of ease them back into society. But again, even if you don't want any help, at no point you get like unless you're trafficking or dealing, you don't get a criminal record. And it's worked out quite well for them. Like, I mean, it has. I think it's a little bit overhyped how much success they've actually had. But what you can say is the drug use hasn't gone up, and it's also easier for those who because what you really want is you want to reach like the hardcore addicts. Like nobody really cares about some like 40-year-old guy who smokes pot in his house because he likes it. Reach the hardcore addicts, and it's become easier for them to either get help or like live with their addiction more like sustainably, stably, if that makes sense. So in that sense, it's worked out quite well, yeah.
Interesting. Well, we need to try something different here in the United States, that's for sure. And I think it's coming with all this criminal justice reform, and a lot of talk about the prisons that are full of people, and so many of them have drug convictions, because we had these draconian laws, man. I tell you, it's just unbelievable. There was a kid that was just like you, Seth Ferrante. I don't know if you've heard of him. He learned to write in
he's one of my
prison.
friends.
You know Seth. So Seth's got that story. He gets 25 years when he's in his early 20s, and he was not any kind of a criminal or a hardened criminal. I bet when he first went in the federal penitentiary system, a little white boy like that from the suburbs, he was, oh man. And I've talked to him before about it a little bit. I've met him a couple of times at a couple of different shows, and it's just, I don't know.
Cool
Of course,
guy, Seth. He's in my book as well.
Oh, is he? Oh, good. So, what about you went down into Sinaloa, Mexico, and you were obviously had breakfast or dinner, was it, with a cousin of El Chapo's? Tell us a little bit about that. That had to be exciting.
Yeah, that was one of the strangest nights of my life, like night and morning. So what happened was I got in touch with like a local Mexican journalist. He's like a part-time filmmaker as well. So basically, he uses the money that he gets from showing foreign journalists around. He takes the money and he piles it into his, like, I think he's making vampire movies or something, like Mexican vampire movies.
Oh yeah, they love those horror movies down there in Mexico. They love vampires. I've been down there several times, and that is a very popular genre.
Yeah. And he's we were gonna go up to the mountains to the village where El Chapo was born, which is called La Tuna. But the roads there aren't very good. I'll tell you why in a minute. So you really need a 4x4 to get through the mountains. And we went around all the car rental places in town. We couldn't find a single free 4x4 that weekend. But I remembered that we'd interviewed this like heroin cook earlier that week. So he takes like the stuff from the opium poppy and he turns into heroin. Mm-hmm. We remembered he was selling his pickup truck. So we just went over to his house, borrowed his pickup truck. So we're driving around in this smack the US pickup truck through the mountains. It was about a 4-hour drive, I think. Twisting and turning. Actually, I think the drive was probably the most dangerous part of the whole thing.
Probably was, but in that dope dealer's pickup truck, you hope he doesn't have any enemies.
Yeah. So we got to the village, and my friend Miguel, he sees someone he knows, and he was like, hey, can you take us to Don Angel's house? And the guy was like, yeah, sure, come on. He took us. It's basically like, sort of like an 80s action movie, kind of drug baron's mansion, like big white hacienda, like bodyguards standing around, except instead of Miami Vice suits, they're wearing these like army camos and bandoliers over there. So we just walked right past security, and we went up to the house. There's this guy just like a silky white shirt and a big gold cross around his neck, just eating his dinner. And he just looks up at us like, who the hell are you guys? And we're like, yeah, we're looking for Don Angel. And he said, yeah, I'm Don Angel. What do you want? So it turns out that was El Chapo's brother, whereas we were looking for his cousin, who's also called Don Angel. So Don Angel's brother had no idea who we were. So we just kind of like meekly backed out of there. I guess like he probably like knew that we were coming, but like, he wasn't expecting us to come to his house. Otherwise, I could have been in a lot more trouble. I think that's what happened. But then we found the other Don Angel, his cousin, who looks like kind of like a stereotypical like Mexican cowboy from an old western, like a big twirly mustache, like one of those big sombrero hats. He was quite cool. We hung around with him for a bit. We drove over to a nearby village to see his friends. And we drove back, and it was already nightfall. And I don't know, maybe they did it for my benefit, because they wanted to just mess with the gringo a little bit. When we got back, so one of the things, Don Angel has a sushi stand by his house. He's really into sushi. So when we got back, there was what I can only describe as a Mexican cartel sushi party. There were about 20 armed guys with like AR-15 and Kalashnikov rifles and like Glock pistols, Colt 45s, all that, just standing around eating sushi, where all this like mariachi music plays in the background. And then this other guy came up to me and he asked me what I thought about Albanians, which I thought was a strange question. But it turns out he's like a big fan of that film Taken, where Liam Neeson's daughter gets kidnapped by the Albanian mob. And yeah, we were just there talking about Liam Neeson movies over sushi with like this Mexican drug lord's cousin, while surrounded by all his bodyguards who are all also eating sushi. It was very surreal.
I can imagine.
Well. And I saw in the morning, I saw there are all these small kind of like crop duster planes flying overhead. So it turns out that the reason why they didn't bother maintaining the roads is to just slow down anyone who's trying to move too quickly through the valley. While all the stuff, like all the opium, is being flown from the poppy fields in those small planes over to the other towns and villages where they actually make the stuff.
Wow, it's amazing.
Roads are on purpose.
Yeah, that is those little details like that they think of to keep that business running. It's and then how open they are once you get there. I just saw I was watching it's like a couple that were had an old van or something. They were going down through Mexico and they were out in the country and they ended up at this big kind of plantation looking place like you described, and then they see like two tigers in a cage out there. And so, people are like, think they're really cool and they're fun. It's kind of fun for them to have somebody from the outside. And I guess they realized they weren't some kind of undercover narcotics people because they brought them right in. They finally figured out this was the house of some cartel boss. And that they were like processing the cocaine, just part of it just like right there. It was amazing how open everybody was about it once you get into that world.
I guess because they all have massive egos as well.
Yeah.
That kind of like, oh, they're writing a book about me, sort of. They're making a movie about me. I think that's actually how El Chapo got caught, because like he thought he was meeting like Sean Penn and this Mexican actress to make a movie about himself.
Yeah.
And I think well, that's what they said, that they said the Mexican security service were tracking them. I think they probably knew where he was the whole time. They just used that as an excuse.
Might be. And I thought, I'm reading between the lines, I thought maybe they got on one of their phones and were tracking one of their phones. They heard that they were trying to meet up with him, and they were tracking one of their phones, which would lead them to, some details about where he might be, but a variety of those things.
They do that a lot. Maybe they just don't want to reveal the tactics,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I was guessing. And we never like to reveal our tactics. I know that. It might work again. I had this former narcotics sergeant that worked black drugs a lot here and cocaine in the Kansas City. And we were talking about The Wire. Have you ever seen The Wire?
Oh, yeah. It's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, mine too. And so she was complaining about The Wire, and it was real popular when she was involved in this. And she said, man, they're giving away all of her secrets. These kids out here, they don't know about cloning a pager and getting up on cell phones and all the different tactics that they use, how they'd get up on roofs and look down and watch them on the street corners and try to put people together and then call in a car from outside. But they didn't know how that car knew what was going on and that kind of stuff. So that show was too real. So this has been great, Niko. Let's see, one last thing. You were born in Russia. You speak Russian, I suppose?
Yeah, конечно, я говорю по-русски.
Yeah. So what about the Russian mob and narcotics?
Oh, that's a interesting thing. Like, you're not gonna find anyone who's like still active these days who's willing to talk about it openly in Russia. In Russia, it's all very tightly controlled by the Russian mob, and the security services are very tightly interlinked. So in like the Soviet era, there's like the sort of kind of this outlaw prison culture called vory v законе, thieves in law. They had all these kind of tattoos, and each tattoo would mean like a different thing, and they're actually very proud to be gangsters. You know, like, and if you ask them, they'll always admit, like, they won't admit to any crimes, but they'll admit like
Yeah.
who they are. Then the like late 80s, early 90s, capitalism happened. All these guys kind of forgot about their outlaw ideals and tried to move into legit business. Some of them did. Some of them are in government now, actually. You can look up your listeners can look up the president of Crimea now. His nickname used to be Goblin back in the 90s. He had like 1 or 2 assassination attempts on him as well. And in terms of narcotics, there used to be like the Russian army, or like elements in the Russian army themselves, were flying heroin over from Tajikistan, which is a country right next to Afghanistan, which is obviously where like 80% of heroin comes from around the world. They're flying the heroin pretty much from across the Afghan border on the military planes to Moscow. It doesn't happen so much these days. The main thing these days with narcotics is everything has gone online. So it's all on the dark web now. And one funny thing about the dark web is I've never ordered on the dark web in the UK or anywhere in the West. But I have friends who have, and like it just goes to their houses. You get delivered in the mail. In Russia, like you can get anything you want and delivered in the mail, like speed, ecstasy, weed, whatever. In Russia, our post system sucks. If you live in a big apartment block like most Russians, like the postman's too lazy to go all the way up the stairs, hand over everyone their package. So if you have anything that doesn't fit through your door, you have to go and sign for it. No one's gonna go and sign for like half a kilo of ganja, you know? So what happens instead is you send them the money online, and they send you the location. They send you like the Google Maps coordinates, and they send you like little like photographs with like little red arrows pointed like where you have to go. So you could go to usually like a park or a forest or like an old warehouse or something, and it'll be like, yeah, it'll be under like the 3rd trash bin on your left or something like that. It's a little Easter egg hunt, you know. But now what's happened basically with drugs in Moscow is that at any given point, there's always like a bunch of teenagers like rummaging around the bushes somewhere. And obviously like the police know what's up as well. And that's created like quite a lucrative sideline for them in on the spot finds, as it were, because police corruption is a big problem in Russia as well.
Interesting. Well, Niko, this has been great. This is kind of a little trip around the world, and you kind of brought us up to date on what's going on in the narcotics business. It's I know that there's a lot coming out of the dark web, but I'm sure they still got the corner boys, as they used to call them, the street corner guys with the crack and heroin houses, the shooting galleries and all that. I would imagine they still have that up. That was what was popular when I was doing the deal. And I would imagine that's still out there. Nostalgia, really. So I appreciate it, and we'll have to have you come back and do something else about. You got like 30 some chapters in your book, Dopeworld. I mean, the marijuana ban in the 30s and the trip to Morocco. We can go all the way back to how we even got the Harrison Act in the United States, and talk about narcotics a little bit more, because it's so topical. And especially in light of what's going on between law enforcement and relations between black folks and white folks in the United States, and this narcotics business. I mean, I worked it, and during the crack cocaine, it was truly an epidemic in the 80s. It was unbelievable. It just was destroying neighborhoods, and the good people in the neighborhoods were begging us for help, and so, we threw all of our energy into it. We had a lot of money from the government to throw at it, and we started putting people in jail. And now you got all these people with these criminal felony convictions that maybe should have just been put into treatment. I got a feeling that a lot of them should have just been put in some kind of narcotics treatment and started providing schools for job skills and things like that. But hindsight's always 2020. So it's the narcotics business is always topical and even more so today, if you ask me. So would you come back one of these days and we'll do a couple more chapters out of your book?
Yeah, it'll be a pleasure. Yeah.
All right, that'll be great. It's really been nice talking to you, Niko.
All right. Thank you very much.
Right.
Have a good day, Gary.
Bye. Okay, bye. Okay, I'll cut this last part off. I'll get hold of you when I put this up. It'll be a month, I'd say now. I just got I just did a whole 3-part series on the mob and the Teamsters that I kind of wanted to get out, and then I got contacted by a public relations company for this Fear City, this new mob documentary coming out.
That's on Netflix,
and so
right?
they're setting me up with interviews of their people, agents that were in the movie, and then I'm supposed to get the director next week. And so I'm like pushing everything aside so I can get that out. They want that released right away.
Yeah.
Of course, a little guy like me is going to jump to the tune of the big ducks like that. I don't get a chance to jump around with those big ducks like that very often.
Have you seen Fair City?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, they sent me a link to watch it about a week or two before it came out. So I watched it and even took notes. It's really well done. And I understand the criticism that it's kind of the same story, but it's told with such high production values from the viewpoint of the FBI agents and the prosecutors that made the case and how they did it. To me, that's always interesting. Is how do you make a case on the mob bosses of the 5 families in New York City? I mean, how do you do that? And they really lay it out in great detail. Plus, they've got the daggonest footage from the FBI of implanting bugs and surveillance footage. I mean, and they've even got an FBI agent who was what we call a tech agent, who was one of the black bag guys. And they got him telling me secrets about how he did different things. And I'm going to tell you something, Niko, that is unheard of. You usually can't I've got friends that are FBI agents, and they won't talk about that stuff and how it was done because they don't want anybody to know. Of course, I would imagine today, technology being what it is, all those old ways of putting in microphones and overhearing people are so far gone that there's a lot, you have no idea what they're doing today, I got a feeling. They just sit at their computer and turn somebody's cell phone into a microphone whenever they want to, more than likely.
Have you seen the show called The Deuce?
I have not. It was on some kind of a cable channel that I didn't have, and I never got to see it.
Okay, I've only seen the first season of it. I haven't seen the rest of it, but it's set in like the early days of the porn business in the
70s, yeah.
New York. So obviously there's like a lot of mob stuff going on as well. It's not the main story, but it's like a lot of the side plots are about that. Yeah.
I really want to see it. One of these days it'll get out there where I can watch it. Sometimes there's so much coming out, it's hard to watch it all. I have to keep up with all of it.
Yeah, we're getting oversaturated.
Oh, what I find is there's always room for more. These mafia podcasts, I've been doing mine for 5 years. And I was about the only guy at the start that was doing a mafia podcast. And then one of the big boys, Gimlet, got into it. And just in the last year, there's been about 3 or 4 more mafia-oriented podcasts. And really in the last couple of months, there's been 2 that's popped up. This Joe Pistone is on one with a guy where he's talking about all his exploits. And then there's one that helped a guy out in Las Vegas get his going who was dealing with just the Las Vegas and organized crime. So it's just
getting old.
No, it's not. We're kind of getting a resurgence here lately in the actual mafia. The horror crime, true crime podcasts, they've been big all along. I don't know why everybody wants to hear about murders and rapes and kidnappings and missing persons, but that's been a lot more popular than the mob podcast for quite a while. All right, Niko. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I will let you know when I send you links when I get this put up. I'll get back in touch with you sometime in the next several months, and anything I can do for you here in Kansas City or in your endeavors, don't hesitate to give me a call.
Cool. I might try to head to America. Well, I don't know. It was going to be this year, but then virus happened.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to be, but I'm hoping within the next year I'll be in the States sometime as well.
Okay, you get around the Midwest, let me know.
Cool.
All right, talk
All
to
right,
you later.
Gary. Talk
All
to you
right,
later.
bye.
Bye-bye.